7 MAX that was on its way to California for storage had to make an emergency landing in Orlando International Airport after an engine-related problem. Officials saying the plane did not have any passengers and there were only 2 on the flight, a pilot and a co-pilot, and the plane landed safely, thank goodness. And now the FAA is investigating all this. Let's bring in Anthony Roman. He's an FAA-certified commercial pilot, former corporate pilot. Mr. Roman, first of all, this is described as an engine problem, but that doesn't necessarily mean that software wasn't somehow involved, right?
That's absolutely correct. These engines have an awful lot of software components to them and overriding software that helps fuel flow and other characteristics during flight operation. So Boeing has its hands full right now. They're having a tremendous amount of bad luck with this aircraft.
Mr. Roman, it's Kevin Kelly here. I mean, it's been pretty interesting since all the developments that have happened since the few crashes and the FAA's response to this. What is your take on how the FAA has interacted with Boeing and then getting these planes actually grounded?
Well, you know, the issues really started back in 2005 when the FAA, and approved by Congress, gave greater autonomy to Boeing in self-certifying their aircraft and engines and the performance characteristics of the new design aircraft. That was basically done so that Boeing could be more competitive with Airbus and produce designs and have the aircraft become operational on a much quicker timeline. Then in 2012, as a result of a number of complaints by FAA design staff concerning their interaction with Boeing, they felt the autonomy had grown on Boeing's part far too large, and were complaining that objections they had to some of the Boeing testing information provided to the FAA were being suppressed by FAA superiors. As a result, there was an investigation, and it concluded that Boeing, in fact, had too much autonomy, but nothing seems to have been done. And that continued, Boeing having all of this autonomy through the time of the development of the 737 MAX and through the course of the accident phase.
Mr. Roman, I was trying to catch up and read a bunch of the articles today, and I read one article that said the Boeing 737 flight simulations that took place gave pilots 40 seconds to override a malfunction system. To me, that sounds like no time at all. But since you're the professional here, I was wondering what you know about this simulation and if that seems like a lot or a little time.
Well, the specifics concerning the simulation haven't been provided in news reports as best as I've seen myself. However, during the takeoff phase, if you have an aircraft pitching downward and unresponsive to the pilot's inputs, even if they temporarily disconnect the previous MCAS design, and the pitch then goes down again in a more steeper configuration because the MCAS software had a background reset of its activation without pilot knowledge. You don't have an awful lot of time to make that correction. 40 seconds to 1 minute sounds about what time you have because you're low, you're slow, and you're very heavy. You have the most fuel and the weight of the passengers and all of the luggage to contend with. That is one of the most critical portions of flight. So 40 seconds to a minute sounds about the right time with or without software that you'd have to correct the problem.
So, Mr. Roman, in terms of what the FAA and the airlines need to ask from Boeing and to test to make sure that these MAX 8s are going to be safe for flying in the future, what does that look like?
Well, it appears to me that the FAA had knowledge that there was problems with the software, quite frankly, probably I suspect, before the first accident scenario. To redo such complex software in such a short period of time following the second accident is not a likely scenario. So I suspect that the identification of the problem and the attempted correction of the problem during that phase of time was a result of knowledge of issues and software glitches before.
Anthony Roman, we really appreciate you coming on for this breaking news. Thank you so much for your expertise.